Welcome back to AllRotors. Today, our mechanic is commissioned to replace the front brake pads and rotors on a 1995 Ford Probe GT. Let's have a deeper look into this procedure and what tools we can use to get the job done. First, the probe is parked on an even, level surface so it can be raised safely with a car jack. This model features a solid metal support at the front, right behind the license plate, that we can prop the jack onto to raise the car. Afterwards, we prop it up onto wheel chocks positioned right behind the wheels. Now that our car is secured, we can use a 21mm socket on either a breaker bar or a drill to remove the lug nuts and remove the front wheels. We then need to remove the caliper bolts using a 12mm socket, and the caliper will slide right off the bracket. We can now remove the anti-rattle clips and the brake pads out of the caliper bracket, as well as the brake pad clips. Then, using a 17mm socket, we remove the two bolts holding the bracket so we can disconnect that as well. With the caliper and the bracket removed, we can use a welding clamp to clamp the brake line and place a receptacle underneath to catch any brake fluid that will seep out once the line is detached from the caliper. This connection is made with a 12mm bolt, so we simply switch back to the 12mm socket and remove it. And now that the caliper is completely disconnected, we can set it aside. The first step from here is to remove any rust buildup using a wire brush drill bit. Here we start with the banjo bolt on the brake line so we can remove and replace the washer inside of it. You may also need to remove some of the rust on the old rotor around the studs if the rotor is stuck. Once we remove the rotor, we continue using the wire brush to remove the rust on the surface of the center register, making sure not to damage the threading on the studs. If you plan to reuse your caliper bracket, make sure to remove the rust from it as well, especially on the surfaces where the brake pad clips will be secured. In our case, we're replacing the caliper brackets as well, so we don't need to do this. Now we can apply an anti-seize compound to the surface of the center register and install the new rotor, then slide the caliper bracket in place and secure it with the 17mm socket. Then, install the brake pad clips onto the bracket, apply brake grease to the outer surface of the brake pads, and slide them into the clips, securing them to the bracket. Once the brake pads are in, simply reinstall the anti-rattle clips and slide the caliper into its place on the bracket, right over the pads. Switch back to the 12mm socket to secure them to the bracket. The final step here is to place a new washer into the banjo bolt on the brake line and reattach it to the caliper with the same 12mm socket before unclamping the brake line. Now that everything is secured in place and the structure is sound, we repeat the exact same procedure on the other wheel. Just like that, all the new parts have been installed. To make sure our new brakes will function correctly, we perform a fluid flush on both wheels. First, loosen the bleed bolt and attach a flush kit, then pump the brakes lightly until there is no more air bubbles in the line. This will ensure that we get consistent braking power with every press of the pedal. Remember to tighten the bleed bolt after this is done. And finally, we can reattach the wheels, placing the lug nuts in place, but not tightening them fully just yet. Once the wheel chocks are removed and your probe is lowered, we can tighten them in a star pattern. Now, all that's left to do is top up the brake fluid and the job is done. Make sure to test your new brakes with some slow controlled stops, and we're all good to hit the road. Thank you so much for joining us at AllRotors. Make sure to check out our app for all of your brake service needs. We hope you have an amazing day. Drive safe, and we'll see you next time.